Sometimes leaders must make drastic measures to accomplish the mission or take drastic measures to take care of their team. Okay, leaders' two main responsibilities are accomplishing the mission that they are assigned and taking care of the team that truly are the ones who are going to accomplish the mission. Because the leaders, they cannot do it alone. I think this is a great topic to close out one year as we think about entering a new year. All right, so what drastic measures have you taken in 2025? What have you learned from them? Why did you even take them? In hindsight, as you look back, were they the right things to do? Were they the right measures to take? And as you look into 2026, what drastic measures might you need to take for yourself to make changes that you want to see in yourself and in your growth and your relationship with Christ? What drastic measures might you need to take as a leader of your family, as a leader in your workplace, maybe in your church? If you sit on your church board, if you're a ministry leader or a pastor, what drastic measures might you need to take in your position with the calling God's placed on your life for the mission, the assignment that He's given you, all for the purpose of advancing His kingdom? What drastic measures have we taken? Might we need to take? And what do we do to prepare ourselves to take drastic measures? That's what this video, this lesson is about today. Now I'm going to read, we just celebrated Christmas. I'm going to read, following the Christmas story, the birth of our Savior, what kind of environment and what drastic measures did Joseph, the husband of Mary and stepfather of Jesus, what drastic measures did he need to take that very much inconvenienced him and his family, but were necessary for the survival and well-being of his family? That's what we're going to read about today. We're going to read out of Matthew chapter 2, starting at verse 13. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. And it said, when they had gone, when the Magi from the east, when they had gone, when they left, the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt. Now we're assuming they are staying in and around Bethlehem. Maybe Joseph and Mary with the large or long movement from Nazareth to Bethlehem for the census that was ordered by Caesar. Maybe they were thinking of living there, taking up their roots in Bethlehem. Joseph was likely reconnected with some other members of his family, maybe some distant relatives, maybe close relatives, and maybe they were thinking of taking up roots there. Just assuming, there's nothing biblical, I think, that says that, but we do know they were still in and around that area. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. So I'll stop there for a second. So we notice that Herod is outwitted by the Magi, and he gives orders to kill all boys 2 years old and younger in Bethlehem. So we can assume that in Bethlehem and the surrounding, it says in its vicinity, we can assume that Joseph, Mary, and Jesus were still there. Otherwise, there'd be no reason for them to flee. So they were still there, and it's probably been between 1 and 2 years since Jesus' birth. Because it says, based on, where does it say? It says in verse 16, in accordance with the time he, Herod, had learned from the Magi. That's why he gave the orders to kill all boys 2 years old and under. So we can assume that at the most, this is 2 years after Jesus' birth. Okay, at the least, this is probably, I don't know, 6 months, a year after Jesus' birth. But it likely is not more than 2 years after his birth, or else Herod would say 3 years old and under. So he's basing it off of the time that he learned from the Magi. All right, so verse 19. After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who were trying to take the child's life are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets: he will be called a Nazarene. So there's a lot going on in this story, a lot of movement, and Joseph's big decision, okay, a drastic measure, arguably not a hard one to make. Like, they needed to flee somewhere, and the Lord specifically told Joseph in the dream to go to Egypt. So he knew where he was going. Okay, but nonetheless, it would be an arduous journey. Okay, going from Bethlehem to Egypt, and then not knowing how long he was going to stay in Egypt, maybe, because the Lord said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you." Okay, so stay there until, it could be a year, it could be 5 years, it could be 20 years. All right, stay there until I tell you. So this is a great story to pull the lesson of taking drastic measures. Again, as I open up this video, what drastic measures might you need to take in your life, in your job, in your ministry? Where might God be calling you? Okay, and I want to talk a little bit about what we need to do before we take a drastic measure. But before that, I want to share a couple stories, one of which was when I think about this lesson of taking a drastic measure, specifically for our families. I think about an individual, family that we met, our oldest 2 boys, very big into soccer, and they played soccer with a young man whose family was from Ohio, but they moved to North Carolina. Now, as we get to know the family a little bit, I kind of learned that they moved from Ohio, not because of dad or mom's job, but they moved because their son was struggling with asthma or some other breathing illness. And the doctor said, when they're trying, like, how can we help our child out? What can we do that's going to be good for him? And they said, you need to move south where it's warm, it's humid, it's going to be healthy for his lungs, and it's going to make life a little easier for him. So they picked up. I don't know how much family they left, but they picked up and they moved, intending to stay there the rest of their lives. I see that as a great example of a drastic measure that parents are willing to take for the quality of life of their son. Now, his life wasn't necessarily in danger staying in Ohio, but the colder air, the drier air probably could have caused a little more issues for their son as their son grew and developed. But they moved to North Carolina, and they got him in a better climate, a better environment to improve his quality of life. Another drastic measure is a measure I took my own. I moved back to Pennsylvania, where I'm from. I took orders, my last set of orders. I intended to move back here and retire on the set of orders that I agreed to. And those orders were to get my master's degree in history and then go teach at the Naval Academy. I thought I would love that job and I thought it would work out for our family. So we moved back to our hometown as this was in 2020. So as COVID was kind of kicking off, I thought I'd be going to a resident program. Well, it was a resident program, but of course we were online most of the time for my master's in history. And so that was in the fall of 2020. By the fall of 2021, as I'm entering my last and second year of the master's program, I started to think about what life would look like when I moved to the Naval Academy. Our plan was to keep our family in central Pennsylvania, and then I would just stay in the Naval Academy from Monday to Friday and do my job and teaching and instructing the midshipmen there. And then I would come home on the weekends, hopefully have some long weekends, get out early Friday, what have you. And that was our plan. But as I got involved a whole lot more than I could whenever I was in a deployable unit, as I got more involved with the family, getting to go to all the different extracurricular activities, be there, drop them off at school, pick them up at school, all this different involved, not to mention our extended family, all here in central Pennsylvania, and getting to spend more time with them. A lot going on. We had our oldest son was up in college, an hour and a half north of us. So trying to get up to see his games and be a part of his life and support him. So a lot going on. And I just thought about if I'm down 2 hours south of here in Annapolis, Monday through Friday, I'm going to miss all this. Not only am I going to miss all that, I'm not going to be able to support my children and their activities. I'm not going to be able to support my wife in running them around and helping around the house. We're going to need help from family or to pay someone to help out. There's a lot of different things that we're going to have to take place. And on top of all of that, the current administration, as you know, was in the late summer, early fall of 2021, had pushed out directives to make the COVID vaccine mandatory for the military. Now, as that vaccine kind of rolled out throughout late 2020 into 2021, I originally wasn't thinking too much of it. I kind of sensed that it was more political than it was actually useful. And I say all that not to point any fingers. If you got it, great. If you didn't, great. That's completely up to you. But I just felt convicted that this wasn't the direction I wanted to take my own children. I did not want them by late summer of 21, early fall. I did not want my children having that vaccine. I did not trust it. I did not trust the process that it went through to get put out for all of us to take it. I also didn't trust the directives that I was getting from the military, specifically in the Marine Corps, the directive, and I had never seen this before on an order. The order that we were given, the written order, mentioned that it's a lawful order. Let me tell you this. If an order is lawful, you don't have to tell me it's lawful, okay? Because the order itself, the content, the context of it, we know it's lawful. Okay, you don't have to tell us it's lawful. So that was a red flag for me. Another red flag was the specific written direction in the order that natural immunity to the disease, to COVID, was not at all a reason to not get the vaccine. To me, that didn't make any sense. And history, especially during the American Revolution, when George Washington was faced with the smallpox epidemic, he specifically wanted people vaccinated from this smallpox. But in a letter to one of his generals, who he was asking for forces, he said, inoculate the ones that have not had it, and for the ones that have already had it, go ahead and forward them to me. He recognized the power of natural immunity. Okay, and then lastly, on top of all that, what I've learned kind of later on after I made my decision to retire is that the military was not accepting any exemptions, religious or otherwise. That's another red flag. The military was not using any discernment in how they decided who they would exempt and who they wouldn't. They just decided nobody is exempt from getting this vaccine. So all those red flags for me calls me to, one, make the decision to retire. It was kind of a last straw. The whole COVID vaccine thing was it wasn't the reason that I started thinking about retiring early, but it was the last straw for me that said, you know what, I need to do this. And it was a drastic measure at the time and the direction I believe God was calling us, certainly. But it was a drastic measure because my retirement was sped up quickly. Some paperwork with my submission was not handled appropriately, so I had to jump through those hoops. So my retirement was very rushed. It's not at all what I had hoped for when I thought of retiring. But it is what it is. I had a lot of love from family and people I'd served with, and I wouldn't have changed anything for the world. It was the right decision at the right time. But again, it was a drastic measure. I had to think about where my income was coming from after I retired. I had to think about where God was calling me. If He was taking me out of the military, what was next? And that's a story for another day, but He certainly has made it clear to me even whenever I did not follow in obedience. But those are a couple stories of drastic measures, and we're faced with those many times in our lives. All right, so I want to talk now about when we might need to take drastic measures. How do we know? What do we do in preparation for that? So the first thing I believe we need to do when thinking about a drastic measure, a big change for ourselves, for our family, again, for the purpose of accomplishing a mission at work, a mission with your family, a mission that God has called you to, that He's assigned for you, but also drastic measures to take care of the team that He's entrusted with us. Again, whether that be at work, whether that be at your church, if you're a ministry leader or pastor, or even your own family. Okay, so the first thing that I believe is to ensure our priorities are aligned. Okay, ensure your priorities are aligned with God. And where do we start with that? We start with the first greatest commandment and the second that is like it. So the first one, love God. Now I'm paraphrasing that. The Bible says love Him with all your heart, your mind, your soul, your strength. Okay, but love God. And the second is love others, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. So we need to think about, is the drastic measure, the change we're thinking about taking, does it focus on loving God first and foremost? And also, does it focus on loving others? Okay, is it focused on service? Is it focused on sacrifice? Is this drastic change, is it inconveniencing us as leaders? Or is it making us comfortable and possibly inconveniencing others? Okay, it may also inconvenience others, but if it's within God's will, if it's a temporary inconvenience for the sake of something bigger, right? That's a form of discipline. That's a form of patience and waiting and trusting God that, okay, we're going to deal with this minor inconvenience, but we're trusting you that you are taking us to something bigger, something in which we're going to experience you more. We're going to grow closer to you. All right. So I think that is the first and most important step we need to take, is ensuring that our priorities are aligned. And how are they aligned? Are they aligned with our love for God and our love for others? If they are not, if the decision is somehow about ourselves and not loving God and loving others, then we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to question. We need to seek God's clarity on that. All right, and the next thing is to pray for the confirmation. All right, if we've ensured our priorities are aligned, We need to seek God not only individually in our time with him, but also corporately with our spouse, with our church family. If you can at work with your coworkers, with a leadership board or team you may have at work who you're seeking their feedback, you're seeking their input before you make a big drastic change and execute a drastic measure. Okay, not all of us are able to do that in the workplace. We can't always just bring together people and pray, but look for areas where you can. It's so important to pray corporately. All right, I know I don't do a good job of this. Sometimes I don't even really think about it, but that's something God's been working on me over the past probably good 6 months to a year, is how I need to pray more, not only solo with him, but pray corporately. It's so powerful when you are seeking confirmation corporately. You hear other people's hearts, you understand their perspectives, and it's all in humility coming before God and seeking his direction. All right, the third thing is that we are to be willing to follow God and step out of our comfort zone. Okay, in our reading, God came to Joseph in a dream. He gave him instructions to get up, take the mother and the child, and go to Egypt until I tell you. All right, so not only did he have to have his priorities in line, align with God, to where that mother and the child were most important to him, he had to have that confirmation. If he would have never had that dream, if God would have never spoken anything to him and given him that clarity, he would have stayed in Bethlehem. Why go to Egypt? But he had to be willing. Okay, now granted, we could argue it's pretty easy to be willing when God tells you that somebody wants to kill your child. Yeah, we're moving. Too easy. Easy decision. Not easy in action, but easy decision. Nonetheless, we have to be willing. Whether it's an easy decision or not, we have to be willing for the road ahead, willing to take the road ahead, willing to endure the road ahead. All right, which will cause us to step out of our comfort zone. We have to be willing to step out of our comfort zone. Okay, if God's calling us to take a drastic measure, the whole definition of that is calling us out of our comfort zone. If we're doing something drastically, we're not going to be able to remain in our comfort zone. So be willing to follow God and step out of your comfort zone. And then number 4 is be prepared. Okay, this really hits on casting a vision, good planning, bold execution, but even before the execution, very much calculated risk. All right, if we're stepping out of our comfort zone, chances are something's going to be risky. Otherwise, we're not calling it outside of our comfort zone. If something's not risky, well then by definition it's still within our comfort zone. Okay, so if we are called to take a drastic measure, God's bringing us out of our comfort zone, we need to plan, and oftentimes planning should involve some wise counsel around you. Again, spouse, teammates at work, people around the church that are leaders that serve in the church. You know who I'm talking about. Just seek the wise counsel at times when you need to do some good planning. And that good planning will unveil some of the risks that you may need to take in this whole action of stepping out of your comfort zone and taking this drastic measure. There will be risks. So what are they? And once you identify them, start to calculate them. Assess the different risks. Figure out what you need to do to mitigate certain risks. Okay, and then bold execution. If you are moving in the direction and taking a drastic measure, it's going to require boldness, bold execution. So right now, as you think about 2026, first, I encourage you to look back on 2025. Where might you have taken a drastic measure? Where might you have sensed God calling you, but you have not taken that step yet? As you think about going into 2026, what drastic measures might God be calling you to take? I encourage you to seek him in prayer. Obviously, like I mentioned, make sure they're aligned with his priorities of loving him and loving others. If they are, seek him in prayer, seek him corporately. Ask him if this is really the direction. Are these really the measures you want me to take? And then be willing. Like, Lord, if I believe you've confirmed it to me, I'm willing. If you haven't confirmed it to me, Lord, I'm willing. Please confirm it. Speak through others. Speak through your creation in different ways. Lord, just confirm it to me. And then lastly, like I said, be prepared. Always be planning. Always be identifying risks and mitigating them. And be ready to take bold execution. Now, James 2 tells us if faith without deeds is dead. If we say we're Christians, we say we're followers of Christ, but we're never willing to put action to our faith, people may question who we really are. And God calls us to take drastic measures, sometimes in testing us, but also so that when we take those measures, when we take those actions, when we have that bold execution, people see the level of our faith. And it could have an impact on their lives and on their faith, especially if they're non-believers. They see what we did, how we stepped out of our comfort zone, took drastic measures in our faith, and how God has worked through us. That's going to be a testimony to everyone around us. And that right there is an opportunity to advance God's kingdom. So when you're at the place where you know God's calling you to take a drastic measure, be bold, don't look back, be all in. Okay, I was talking to my son. He's currently in Navy boot camp. I was talking to him last spring, and he was throwing around the idea of joining the military. And he was talking about a situation and, wanting things to be different. He was waiting for some circumstances to change. And I just encouraged him. I said, son, if you want something to change, then change something. See, if we look around our situations, our circumstances, and we're just hoping for something to be different, hoping for a change to be made, but yet we're not taking any steps to make it happen, don't be surprised when nothing has changed. So I encourage you, enter 2026 prepared to change, willing to change, and seeking God if there's a drastic measure that he wants you to take this year. Happy New Year.